Join us and Neighborhood Cats for all you need to know about trap, neuter, return, TNR, and colony management. You'll learn the basics and walk away with the tools you need to be successful in helping outdoor cats. Workshops are typically held the first Saturday of the month. Registrants will have the opportunity to earn a certificate. For more information and to register today, go to communitycatspodcast.com.
You've tuned in to the Community Cats Podcast. Ready? Let's go.
Welcome to the Community Cats Podcast. I am your host, Stacy LeBaron. I've been involved helping homeless cats for over 20 years with the Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society. The goal of this podcast is to expose you to amazing people who are improving the lives of cats. I hope these interviews will help you learn how you can turn your passion for cats into action. Today, we're speaking with Winter Miller. Winter is a playwright who lives in Brooklyn, New York. She's a former journalist who has worked in the editorial department of the New York Times, the newsroom of Fox News, and at Full Frontal with Samantha Bee. Her writing has appeared in the New York Times, New York Magazine, the Boston Globe, and in anthologies edited by Eve Ensler, Jay Courtney Sullivan, and Courtney Martin, and Lizzie Skurnick. Winter and her work have been profiled in the New Yorker, Bomb, New York Magazine, and on NPR's Brian Lehrer Show, and all of it with Allison Stewart. A graduate of Smith College, she holds a master's degree from Columbia University. Not a Cat is her first picture book, and learn more about Winter at wintermiller.com. Winter, I'd like to welcome you to the show.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
Yeah.
It's radio, so you can't see that I have a tiny kitty in my lap, but just know that this entire situation is being supervised by a 5-month-old kitty.
Oh, that's so cute. And I do get the privilege of seeing the kitty, and it's very, very cute. And so nice that you have guests with us today. We have extra guests. So with the kitty in your lap, how did you become passionate about cats?
Just always was lucky enough to be born into a family where my parents are divorced, but when I was at my mom's house, we always had a cat, and they're the best. I can't imagine being without them.
Very simple, straightforward. It says here in your bio, you went to Smith College. I'm a graduate of Vassar College. So we are
seven sisters.
Seven sisters. Yes. When you went to college, what did you focus on there?
I double majored in theater and women's studies. I think my bio left out the fact that what I do is I'm a playwright. So I write plays and I work with playwrights on writing their plays. This is my first children's book, and it actually came about just because I was really, really in love with my cat. He was my best friend, and I wanted to write a book celebrating him. So that's how that came about. I didn't know I was going to write a children's book until I did.
And why did you decide to focus on a children's book? I mean, a lot of people can write stories about their relationships with their cats or their pets or their animals. There's a lot of bonding. I think a lot of bonding dog books out there and that kind of thing. Why did you decide to focus on children?
That's a good question. Maybe because it has so few words, and that seemed appealing. I mean, maybe at some point I will write an essay or something about Gato and about what that companionship was like. But I also, I love children's books, and I love children's television. I love Sesame Street and Reading Rainbow and that sort of thing. So it just felt like the right medium, because I also wanted illustrations or pictures. The thing about Gato is that in the book, we did basically all of those things and more that you see in the book. And so I wanted people to know that this is a cat who went canoeing in the Adirondacks. This is a cat who went hiking. This is a cat who took airplanes. This is a cat who pretended to drive a car, all of those things. So it seemed to go well with a children's book, really. I don't know. It just, I really can't explain it. It was just something that I wanted to do. And that seemed like the right medium.
So it was an adventure, sort of the adventure and the romance of it, maybe, that helped with trying to put it into that medium.
Yeah, I think also just children love cats. They love animals, and it's a perfect audience. I mean, I think of course the book is for adults and for parents and all of that, but one of the things that I like to do with Gato is take him around Brooklyn and have him meet kids who didn't have cats and see, their fear about touching a cat, or would it bite them, or all of that, and just let them meet Gato. And, he was like a little furry mayor. He brought people on the street together, or at airports. Like, he just was always making people happy. So I think that was the other part of it, is because he brought me so much happiness, and because I could see him bringing other people so much happiness, I wanted to just widen the scope of that. And it just felt like cats and children, children and cats.
All right. Yeah. When my son was very young, I had a group of cats here, and I had one cat who no one could touch, no one except for my son when he was very young. And I think that there's this level of communication between cats and young children that maybe we don't see too easily, because young children don't have a lot of the emotional barriers that we as adults sometimes carry, I think. And at least in the case of this particular cat, she was very trusting of him, and they knew how to connect with each other in a way that she could not connect with any other human beings. People would say, oh, she's a house feral cat, or, you shouldn't have her as an indoor cat. She should be outside, with all the other ferals and that kind of thing. But my son thinks very fondly of her. I mean, she's not with us anymore, but he has these very special memories of her as when he was a child. So there's this incredible relationship, I think, between, children and animals. And as you said, children's books are not just for children, and also say my mother, when she had severe dementia, we used children's books with her all the time. She's a huge, passionate cat lover. And she would read the children's books about cats all the time. I mean, she would underline the words, and she'd put stars next to things in the pictures. And it was very entertaining for her, as she was entering her last season of life, I guess, as they would say. So it served an incredibly good purpose there for her too. So I'd say that certainly children's books are multiple audience books for sure.
Yeah, I've also been hearing that this is a great book for caretakers in general. So people who are taking care of elderly folks as well. And just part of the existence of the book is it also has a piece about grief, because the book was already made, but Gato passed away last October at 13, and he'd been sick for 3 years with cardiomyopathy. And he'd been given maybe, a month or so to live, and he outlived that by another 3 years. But it meant that he and I were together every day, because I had to give him medicine in the morning and medicine at night. And that meant I travel a lot. So that meant he was always going with me. But the publisher suggested that we have an in memoriam page for him at the back of the book. And we do. And to me, that's a real celebration of his life. But I think it also opens the door for people to be able to talk about their own grief, whether it's that they've lost a pet or someone in their family, that it opens the door to say, yeah, part of loving is losing.
Right. I know it sounds like the book was primarily written before he passed away, but do you think that helped you through the grieving process to know that you had this book already done?
100%. Because the other thing about Gato is that he actually had a pretty large fan club. I would post about him on Facebook and stuff like that. And he also was out in the world. Like when I was out teaching classes, he would be with me, or if I was in rehearsals, he would be with me. So he met a lot of people, and a lot of people were really fond of him and were constantly asking how he was. And so if you're hearing tiny meows in the background, that's not me. That's Tiny Kitty wanting to weigh in on their predecessor, I guess. But knowing that I was going to be able to continue to share Gato with other people made me really happy. It was a way of sharing someone who'd been so important to me. So I feel really lucky, that the book exists, because every time I see it, I get to celebrate my best friend.
How did you adopt Gato?
I adopted Gato there was a shelter in Union Square, and I'd gone online and looked at kittens and cats and all of that. And I found that I just couldn't tell. I needed to know the personality of that cat, and just looking at these little boxes, it was like, Match or Bumble or something. And it just wasn't right. So I went into this place that had the cats, and they were all in cages. And the rule was that you couldn't hold one, you couldn't take it out and touch it until you had decided that that was the cat for you. So there were maybe 40 or 50 cats in cages, and I was just there by myself. And I just stood in front of each of the cages and read their profile and looked at the cat and watched, what were they doing? Were they playing? Were they sleeping? And just tried to get a sense of who they were. And I stopped in front of this one cage, and it was this cat named Clayton, who was gray and white. And I had the cat I'd had previously, I had found on the beach in Provincetown. It was like a 4-week-old under a dock. It had been abandoned, and I had just, raised it as, a tiny person with fur or something. But so when I was ready to get another cat, I wanted a cat that was a little smaller than my previous cat was named Peeve. And I wanted a cat that was a little smaller. And this cat Clayton was curled up in a ball, like a little cinnamon bun. And I looked at the age, and they said that he was somewhere between 6 months and a year, so that he was pretty much done growing. And I thought, yes, this is the right size cat for me, along with all of the other personality traits, just that he was mellow. And so I chose the cat. They opened the door, and then they handed this cat to me, and he unfurled. He was the longest cat I'd ever seen. And I just thought, oh, I got tricked. This isn't a little cinnamon bun. This is a giant, long, thin cat. But we'd already chosen each other. So, it was done. And I looked at him and I was like, your name isn't Clayton, is it? And I realized it's not like he'd walked into a shelter and said to them, hey guys, I want you to call me Clayton. And that there was no way that he had any affection for that name at all. And of course, there's a good debate about whether or not cats do know their names. But I realized that I didn't have to stick with Clayton. And so I chose Gato because I also at that time had a nephew who was a newborn and who is half Dominican. And because I don't speak very much Spanish, I just thought this would be a little bonding way to call the cat Gato. So that was how I came to get the longest cat known to humans.
Do you think that folks, and we've had a lot of different feline behaviorists on the show, as well as folks that are, involved with like adventure cats and cat explorers and that kind of thing. And it sounds like you took Gato pretty much anywhere, everywhere. So it sounds like you're sort of a believer of this, bring your cat around like you'd bring your dog with you, bring your cat with you. Is that sort of the position that you take?
Yeah, I don't see that there's any difference. I think the only thing that sort of stands in the way is, are people comfortable with having a cat around? Something that I've often encountered is that people say, oh, I love cats, but I have allergies, or I hate cats, I have allergies. And there are definitely some people in the world who have serious cat allergies, and I have met them and I honor their allergies. There also are thousands of people who just make up that they have allergies because they don't want to deal with a cat or whatever. But I've had so many people who are like, I'm allergic to cats except for your cat. I love being around your cat. And I'm like, well, yeah, I get it. He's, a short hair, and I brush him and stuff, but you're also not that allergic to cats if you're sitting here and you're fine and you're holding my cat and, rubbing your face in my belly. So part of it is just, people have this assumption that cats are standoffish, or that they're, cold, or, whatever. And that dogs are man's best friend. And, I obviously don't feel that way. My cat was my best friend, and there was so much joy in bringing him places. And, he also was helpful. I was out in San Francisco working on a play, and there were lizards, humans dressed as lizards in the play, but Gato was in rehearsal. And so they were watching the way his haunches moved, the way he would sort of slink across the stage, the way he would approach you if you were holding a tuna sandwich, all of that stuff. But he was as person-like, as dog-like, as cat-like. He really just went across the boundaries of what people think a cat is. And to me, that was important. And that's why I wrote the book, was every time people would meet him, they'd be like, oh God, he's so great. He's so much like a dog. And my response was, no, he's a cat. Like, this is it. This is also what a cat is. The other thing I would encounter is that people would say, oh, is it a boy? Is it a girl? And, my response was just, it's a cat. It doesn't matter what their gender is. Like, he'll answer to girl, boy, whatever. It's a cat, don't get too hung up on the gender. It's just a cat. And I felt that way just about the way he existed in the world, is don't get too hung up on whether or not this is cat-like and what is or is not. I took him swimming to see what was that like? What does a cat look like when they swim? And I didn't know if he could swim. And, the cat jumps in you put him in the water and he moves his paws, and it is what everyone else refers to as a doggy paddle. So it could have been called a kitty paddle or a cat paddle, but it's just that more dogs do it, but he could swim.
With the holidays right around the corner, curl up with a furry friend and a copy of the new book, How Snowball Stole Christmas by Kristen McKenna. The adorably funny brand new novel featuring one very opinionated, very beautiful matchmaking cat named Snowball. The story is as cute as the cover. It's the perfect stocking stuffer. Clever scallywag of a cute as a button cat residing in a small town Victorian B&B and matchmaking on the down low, bringing two hearts together, all wrapped up like a pretty Christmas bow on a creamy white cat named Snowball. There's no end to the way Snowball can drum up trouble to bring two people together who start out despising each other. This sleuth will stop at nothing to make the perfect holiday match for her resident humans, even if it means being a little more naughty than nice. Just in time for the holidays, How Snowball Stole Christmas from Kensington Books is available everywhere books are sold. It's a great read. Team Dubert is at it again, and now they have an amazing companion case management module that once again revolutionizes how you rescue animals. Dubert partnered with Dallas Pets Alive and the Spay Neuter Network to build a powerful solution that allows you to manage cases of any kind, whether owner surrender calls or emails, community cat tracking and reporting. Dubert is the only system that integrates two-way text messaging, automatic follow-ups, and even a rehoming solution that every organization can use. No more trying to manage 10 different technologies when everything is all in one place and tightly integrated. From fostering to transport, fundraising to e-commerce, supply and demand to case management, Dubert has everything you need to streamline your operations so you can focus on saving more animals. Check out the new companion case management module at www.dubert.com/CCM and get signed up today. Ever wanted to quickly connect, collaborate, or problem solve with others in the animal welfare field who are, real people? Look no further than Maddie's Pet Forum. Maddie's Pet Forum brings people of animal welfare together with the common goal to keep more people and pets together. We share ideas, expertise, offer each other support, resources, and more. Visit forum.maddie'spetforum.org/cats. Maddie's Pet Forum. Come for an answer. Stay for the community. So it's really interesting, you're sort of talking about respecting him for just, Gato for who he was and just the kind of personality that he has. And different cats have different personalities. And I'm sort of trying to feed around here to the fact that, you're in Brooklyn. I think of New York as being a mecca for community cats. There's a lot of trap, neuter, return outside in the various boroughs and that kind of thing. Have you had any involvement with regards to TNR or community cats, just even in your own neighborhood?
I haven't. There's that app next door, and people are always posting about that they found a feral cat, or that they, that a cat needs rehoming or stuff like that. I admire the people who are out there, trapping and saving and rehoming. It doesn't fit into my life at this time, partially because, I seem to be a one cat person. So it's not like I could bring one home. And the thing that had happened with Gato is that early on in his life, he'd been attacked by a few different cats. So he didn't start off terrified of cats, but he then was. And so having him around other cats, I really had to keep distance. So it's not something that I've brought, other new cats into my home. And I think I'm always sort of conflicted about how do you take care of a cat that is in the street? What's the right thing to do? And watching people put food out and just kind of, monitoring. But if I see a cat in the street, I'm always looking to, see, does it have a collar? Is it, does it belong to someone? And are they missing that cat first of all, but then also just trying to make sure that it's not running out into the street. But I am not an active cat fetcher or rehomer, but I appreciate the patience of those who do it and the skill that it takes to have a cat trust you. I do think that is an amazing thing. If I've ever been in a circumstance where a non-domesticated animal has approached me or hung out with me, I do think that is a very special feeling, and probably like what your son felt. To sort of be chosen by an animal feels really good, just as, to hold an infant and have it fall asleep in your arms. Same thing, just to be trusted is nice.
Yeah, I always find it fascinating to try and understand how folks that maybe aren't in the day-to-day world of trap, neuter, return, trapping cats, rescuing them, getting the kittens, just trying to understand, what's the perception of community cats out there? What is it that you see versus what is it that other people see that may have like their community cat spidey sense going out there and that kind of thing. And it's great to know that you're appreciative of the efforts of those that are out there, that you understand that trap, neuter, return is happening out in the community. Obviously, you're more versed in the cat world than somebody who is maybe what would say not be a cat person. But I always try and understand sort of what we as a society are understanding about community cats in the area, because we can think, oh, everybody knows this, right? Everybody knows this, but not everybody. Everybody doesn't know this. They don't know, that an ear tip. What does an ear tip mean? When a little part of the ear is taken off, and means that they're already spayed and neutered, and that somebody else is, looking out for them in most cases, and that kind of thing. And, what to do about a litter of kittens that are, do you worry about what age that litter of kittens is? And do you go grab them? Do you not go grab them? What do you do if you hear the mewing kittens, underneath the boxes or underneath a dumpster or something like that? What's the interaction that you need to do? So I always find it really fascinating to talk with different folks to find out sort of where's our common line or understanding, our baseline understanding, where when I first started in this and back in the 90s, I was just like, oh, you call, animal control and they'll just come, they'll trap them, they'll euthanize them. And it's now so great to hear people talking about, trap, neuter, return as being much more of a common and more accepted and more suggested option out there for sure.
Yeah, I think that the internet makes that a much greater possibility. And I think also the way that people are communicating after disasters and making sure that pets are rehomed is, there is greater care about making sure that pets are not left alone.
Yeah. Can you just share a little bit about your playwright work? Just share a little bit about what that's all about.
Sure. I like to write plays about the human condition. They sometimes are comedies. They sometimes are drama. I'm usually interested in looking at a question and figuring out how could I approach that through theater. So the most recent play that I just opened, it actually just closed yesterday, Sunday. Well, by the time this airs in October, it will have been closed for a long time. But my most recent play is called When Monica Met Hillary, and is about an imaginary meeting between Monica Lewinsky and Hillary Clinton. Because I just got to thinking, like, what would these two people say to each other if they were in a room? And I found it really fascinating that they had not ever met, to my knowledge or anyone else's. And just thinking about what is the work that women are often doing to clean up the messes made by men, and how is that done? And it's for women. It's Monica's mother, Marcia, and Hillary's surrogate daughter, Huma Abedin. And everyone is facing that question of how do you move on? A previous play that I wrote was about genocide in Darfur, Sudan. And the reason for that was that it was 2004, and I was working as a news clerk at the New York Times with op-ed columnist Nicholas Kristof. And he was covering the genocide in Darfur. And I had access to all this information because not many people in the US knew that there was a genocide then. And so I had all of this information, and I won a contest to write a play. And so I did. And I also traveled there with him just to be able to see what it was like on the ground and get a sense of that. The play that I'm working on next is about abortion, and it's about the history of it. But it's also about just the semantics that depending on how you feel about abortion, that one person will say that someone is carrying a fetus, and the other person will say that that person is carrying a baby, and that we so often get stuck in the semantics of whether it's a baby or a fetus. And what I'm concerned about is asking the question, how do we take care of the person who is alive, who is carrying, whether it's a baby or a fetus? How do you respect that person's wishes, and how do you take care of what they need? And that we have a country in which that right is so quickly eroding. But I also wanted to look at abortion over time. And it has, of course, always existed. It just at one point got medicalized, and that totally changed access to it. But it will always exist. So since it will always exist, I personally would like to see that it is safe and legal. So this play just explores abortion, but it also has talking fetuses in it. So it really allows for the possibility of holding multiple opinions and exploring what it might be like to try on a different opinion from the one you've always had.
It's really funny. I'm going to take this in a totally different direction than you probably are anticipating in this conversation, but you're talking about these different voices, and animal welfare throughout the pandemic has had a lot of changes in how we handle our operations. Our staffing changed because when we shut down, everybody got furloughed or they left. And so that's a lot of change of staff, a lot of questions around diversity, a lot of questions of providing services into communities, not within communities. A lot of 50-something white women coming in, doing stuff, but not into the community, but not amongst the community, if that makes any sense. So we have a lot of conversations going on, a lot of compassion fatigue, a lot of moral distress. There's lateral violence because of the stress. So there's internal bullying going on, external bullying from social media. And so some of those stresses and the conversations you're talking about in your plays, totally raw, honest, emotional energy within the animal welfare space is happening right now. And it's going to take a long time to recover, feel comfortable, to heal, to resolve, and maybe we won't even get there. I don't know.
Yeah, I think in all the places that there are reckonings over inequities or injustices, I think that it's high time that we're going through them, and that we figure out a way to call each other in that process. There's this speaker who I love. Her name is Loretta J. Ross, and she talks about call-in culture, and that rather than moving from a place of trying to shame people, of trying to call them in and figure out how do we talk to each other so that we can educate and move forward without just sort of saying, well, you don't know this, you don't understand this. And it is delicate, tender work, and it involves people sitting in the fire and a lot of discomfort. And the thing is that there are people who have been sitting in that fire and in a lot of discomfort for so many years, while others of us were not. And so, I am interested in all the ways that we all have to reckon with trying to make spaces that are welcoming, that are fair, that are kind. And that means looking at our own behavior and saying, where do I fit in? The theater community is going through that as well, because it is the economics of it are so unjust that it's often a hobby for wealthier white people. And, people are saying enough, change the way this is being done, because it isn't being done in a way that is not just fair, but is best. That idea of that someone else's oppression affects someone else is so true. And so, as a white woman, I'm not out there trying to save someone else. I'm actually just trying to make my life as just and as open and as fair as I am for other people, because I do think that we are linked. But I think that it's really easy to fall into a savior mindset. With the war in Ukraine right now, I had this idea with my book, Not a Cat, because the cover of it is bright yellow, and the writing is blue. And I was like, oh, this is the Ukrainian flag. Wow. And there's all these children who you see pictures of them having lost their pets or being reunited with them, and they've lost everything. And my thought was, how do I get this book to Ukrainian refugees? And can I translate it into Ukrainian and donate it to them and all of that? And, my mind races about how would I do that? But the first question is, do those people want this book? Is this needed? And are there other things that would better serve? And so to just sort of step back and take a breath and realize, again, not coming from outside of a community, but finding who's within the community. And is this something that people would need and want?
Yeah, very, very true, very accurate. And it's a challenge. I think it's very much of a challenge in lots of spaces for all of us. So Winter, if folks are interested in getting your book, how would they do that?
Well, the book is called Not a Cat. And if you type into your search engine, Not a Cat and Winter Miller, I promise you that the book will come up. You can look on places like Bookshop or other independent bookstores they'll match you with the bookstore that's nearest to your community, so you can buy local. Obviously, you can get it on the big chains as well, but I think you can get it anywhere.
And we'll make sure we have a link in the show notes to your website for sure, and then people can find it from there. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners today?
I'd like to share just that the point of Not a Cat is about letting your cat or your small child be exactly as they are. So when people would come up and say to Gato, oh, he's just like a dog, my point was, no, this is just Gato. This is who he is. And I felt like that as growing up, and just people trying to label me as a tomboy. And I was like, no, I'm an athlete. I'm Winter. This is just who I am. And this is what I want to wear. And this is how I want to be in the world. And so I wrote a book that is for all of those people out there who just want to be who they are. And my hope is that parents in reading it realize, I want to let my kid be who they are. And that's the greatest sign of love. So I hope that this book gets out in the world and that it's a comfort to kids who are trying to express who they are, but that people also realize, we don't have to build bullies. We can teach people to love other people just as they are. And my hope is that this book contributes to a kinder world.
Wonderful. Winter, I want to thank you so much for joining us today and for being a guest on the show. And I hope we'll have you on again in the future.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
That's it for this week. Please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. We love to hear what you think, and a 5-star review really helps others find the show. You can also join the conversation with listeners, cat caretakers, and me on Facebook and Instagram. And don't forget to hit follow or subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss a single show. Thanks for listening, and thank you for everything that you do to help create a safe and healthy world for cats.